Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions, the mystery of Roman dodecahedra, ancient objects with no known purpose. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. They have been found across a vast swath of the Roman Empire, from Britain to Hungary, from Belgium to Italy. More than 100 of them have been catalogued. They are made of bronze or stone, consist of 12 pentagonal faces with circular holes of varying diameters, studded with spherical knobs at each corner, and range from 4 to 11 centimeters in size. They date from the 2nd to 4th centuries AD. And despite more than 2 centuries of scholarly attention, no one has any convincing idea what they were for. They are called Roman dodecahedra, and they are one of archaeology's most genuinely perplexing mysteries, not because they are clearly supernatural or impossible, but because no Roman text ever mentions them, no illustration of them has been found, and the variety of proposed purposes, astronomical instruments, measuring devices, dice, candle holders, knitting gauges, all have problems that prevent confident identification. They exist in the archaeological record as pure form without explanation. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the wider world of ancient technological anomalies, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The official story of technological progress follows a reassuring arc. Stone tools giving way to bronze, bronze to iron, iron to steel, and finally, the Industrial Revolution catapulting humanity into the modern age. In this narrative, each generation inherits a slightly more sophisticated toolkit than the last, and no knowledge is ever truly lost. It is a comfortable story. It is also, in key respects, demonstrably false. History is littered with technological achievements that appeared centuries before their supposed invention, vanished after the cultures that created them collapsed, and were reinvented, often with great difficulty, by later civilizations who had no idea the knowledge had ever existed. Roman concrete was stronger and more durable than most modern concrete, and was not matched again until the 21st century. Greek fire, the incendiary weapon that protected the Byzantine Empire for centuries, has never been fully reproduced. Damascus steel, capable of holding an edge that modern metallurgists struggle to replicate, disappeared with the craftsmen who made it. These are not myths. They are documented historical losses of genuine technical knowledge. When we encounter an object from the ancient world that should not exist, a battery from Baghdad dated to the Parthian era, a computing mechanism salvaged from an ancient shipwreck, a map showing geographical features that were not officially discovered for another millennium, the temptation is to dismiss it as misidentified or misstated. That dismissal is sometimes warranted. But when such objects accumulate, when the pattern becomes too consistent to ignore, the honest response is to ask whether our model of ancient capability is simply wrong. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding Roman dodecahedra, ancient objects with no known purpose, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Roman dodecahedra have been found exclusively within the territory of the Roman Empire, mostly in northern Europe, Gaul, modern France and Belgium, Britain, Germany, and the Danube regions. This geographic distribution is itself informative. They are almost entirely absent from the Mediterranean heartland of the empire, suggesting a function specific to the northern frontier regions. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes, but as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the holes in the faces of dodecahedra vary in diameter from face to face on each individual object, and the sizes are not standardized between objects. Each dodecahedron has its own configuration of hole sizes. This variability has been used to argue against measurement and gauging functions, since standardization would be essential for those uses. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. Many dodecahedra have been found in coin hoards, buried with valuable objects for safekeeping, which has been used to argue that they were considered valuable or precious in some sense, possibly as religious or ritual objects, rather than everyday tools. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, a hollow Roman icosahedron, 20-faced polyhedron, has also been found, raising the question of whether Romans were constructing a series of regular polyhedra for some purpose. The Platonic solids were well known in Roman intellectual culture through the works of Plato and his successors. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of experimental archaeologist has proposed that dodecahedra functioned as knitting gauges for determining the correct needle size for different wool thicknesses, and has demonstrated that the objects can function this way. However, no contemporary text describes this use, and the absence of any knitting context in the fine locations is unexplained. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. The geographic concentration in Roman Britain and Gaul coincides with the areas of strongest Celtic cultural tradition within the empire, leading some researchers to propose a Celtic religious or ritual function that was not Roman, but was carried by Roman period Celtic populations. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain Roman dodecahedra, ancient objects with no known purpose. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Roman dodecahedra were astronomical or calendrical instruments used to determine the optimal planting dates for winter wheat by observing the sun through specific holes at specific times of year. Researchers have demonstrated that a dodecahedron can be used this way in the latitudes where most examples are found, and the agricultural importance of planting calendars in the Roman northern provinces would explain why they are concentrated there. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that dodecahedra were sacred objects associated with a mystery cult, possibly Mithraic or a Celtic tradition, whose members kept them private and whose ritual use was never committed to writing for secrecy reasons. This would explain the absence of any literary reference, the concentration in hoards with valuable objects, and the geographic concentration in areas with strong religious diversity. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that Roman dodecahedra were toys, dice, or game pieces of some kind whose rules and uses were so familiar that they were never explained in writing, like a modern game whose rules are universally known and never need to be written down. The variable hole sizes could be the equivalent of a ball in a cup game requiring a ball to be dropped through a specific hole. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding Roman dodecahedra, ancient objects with no known purpose, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes: find contexts show that dodecahedra appear in a variety of settings: hoards, temples, military camps, and domestic settings, suggesting they were not restricted to a single type of use or user, but were present across different social contexts in the northern provinces. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented the concentration of finds in northern Gaul and Britain rather than Italy or the Mediterranean regions is a consistent and well-documented archaeological pattern that any successful interpretation must explain. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed. Experimental demonstrations have shown that dodecahedra can function effectively as agricultural calendars, knitting gauges, and astronomical sighting devices. Multiple functions are practically possible, but none has been confirmed as the actual historical use. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding Roman dodecahedra, ancient objects with no known purpose. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Roman dodecahedra exemplify a category of ancient artifact that is genuinely mysterious, not because its provenance is in question or its dating is uncertain, but because its function is simply unknown. The objects are real, well-dated, and extensively studied. The mystery is not about whether they exist, but about what they meant to the people who made and used them. A reminder that access to the physical past does not always give us access to the cultural meanings encoded in the objects the past produced. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of Roman dodecahedra, ancient objects with no known purpose, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Roman dodecahedra ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process, and the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.